What I'm about to share with you is my testimony of near-death experiences, about what happened when Jesus showed me the shocking truth about fasting. I literally saw and experienced something that completely changed my understanding of fasting, prayer, and the spiritual kingdom. But before we begin, please tell me where you are listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even though we are physically apart. Also, do not forget to like and comment on what you think of this near-death experience testimony so that we can have a fair and open discussion and learn from one another on this channel. Enjoy the listening. It happened on the 12th of September of 2023. I was on my 7th day of fasting, taking only water, something I felt strongly guided by the Holy Spirit to do. Fasting had always been part of my spiritual journey, but this particular fast felt different. There was a supernatural weight about it that I could not explain. I remember driving to our church's morning prayer meeting at 5:30 in the morning. The streets were quiet and a gentle rain was falling, something unusual in Sacramento in September. I was listening to worship music and praying, feeling particularly close to the presence of God. I had just entered Madison Avenue when everything changed. A drunk driver in a pickup truck ran the red light at high speed, colliding with my car directly on the driver's side. The impact was devastating. Later, I learned from medical reports that the accident caused severe internal bleeding, multiple organ failures, and that my heart stopped beating for 17 minutes and 23 seconds. But what happened during those 177 minutes was more real than anything I had ever experienced in my 45 years of life. The transition from life to death was instantaneous. In one moment I was in my crumpled car, and in the very next moment I found myself floating above the scene of the accident. I could see everything with perfect clarity, the paramedics working frantically on my body, the police directing traffic, even the young person who hit me, sitting on the sidewalk with their head in their hands. But then something extraordinary happened. Everything around me began to fade away, and I found myself being pulled upward through what I can only describe as a tunnel of pure, living light. The feeling was unlike anything earthly. There was no fear, no pain, only an overwhelming sense of peace and love that filled every part of my being. As I moved through that tunnel, I realized that I was no longer in my physical body, yet I felt more real and alive than I had ever felt before. My spiritual senses were heightened to a degree I had never imagined possible. Suddenly, I emerged into what I can only describe as the outer courtyards of heaven. The beauty was indescribable, colors that do not exist on earth, music that seemed to come from every corner and from nowhere at the same time, and a light brighter than the sun, yet it did not hurt the eyes. What caught my attention the most was what I saw happening between heaven and earth. From that vantage point, I could see golden threads of light stretching from earth to heaven. These were not just random filaments. They were spiritual pathways created by people who were fasting and praying. It was like looking at a spiritual map of the world, with these brilliant connections forming a bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms. Then I heard his voice. Jesus. I knew instantly that it was him, even though he had not yet appeared before me. His voice resonated throughout my being. Nicole, I have brought you here to show you what your eyes have not seen and your ears have not heard. At that moment, Jesus appeared before me. His appearance was both familiar and gloriously different from any artistic representation I had ever seen. His presence was overwhelming, pure love, authority, and power radiating from him in waves. In his eyes there was a depth of love and understanding that made me feel completely known and cherished at the same time. Observe, he said, and suddenly a series of visions about fasting were shown to me, visions that would forever change my understanding of this spiritual discipline. Amid these powerful visions and the flow of revelations about fasting, two other divine messages emerged, further enriching my experience. One of them was the revelation of the letter M. During that period of deep spiritual communion, a singular revelation presented itself, containing the letter M. That letter ceased to be just a graphic symbol and transformed into a divine sign, representing various aspects of mission and spiritual identity for me. The letter M came to mean mission and ministry, a reminder that, as a daughter of God, I am called to live out and share a transformative message. Every time I saw it, I felt the importance of fulfilling the role that God had assigned to me, reinforcing mercy and miracle, the essence of divine mercy, showing that God's grace and forgiveness work miracles in the lives of His children, change and manifestation, a sign of internal transformation and the manifestation of faith in the world. The subtle presence of that letter at significant moments during my fast indicated that God was shaping and strengthening my life for a greater purpose. Shortly after, another enigmatic message presented itself: half moon in the hand. This expression, full of symbolism, invited me to interpret the celestial signs and to find guidance in the beauty and mystery of the universe. Its meanings were revealed as follows: intuition and reflection. Holding the half moon in the hand symbolizes the ability to capture divine light even in moments of darkness, just as the half moon shows only part of its light, reminding me that even when divine light seems incomplete, it is enough to guide me. Cycles of renewal. The image of the half moon emphasizes that life is made up of cycles and transitions, teaching me to value periods of uncertainty as necessary stages for spiritual renewal, where the light gradually rebuilds itself. Celestial wisdom, an invitation to seek the wisdom that resides in every detail of the universe, recognizing that even if the light appears partial, it carries within it the fullness of divine truth. The half moon in the hand showed me that by keeping our faith, we can capture and reflect that light in a unique and transformative way. After these intense revelations, Jesus continued to show me visions that deepened my understanding of fasting. He demonstrated how each day of fasting was creating a clearer and stronger channel between heaven and earth, as if a spiritual muscle were growing stronger with each passing day. I saw my prayers gaining authority, breaking through spiritual barriers that would normally take months or years to overcome. Then, Jesus took me to what He called the halls of time, where I could see countless believers throughout history who had dedicated themselves to intense fasts. I saw Moses during his 40 days of fasting, receiving the 10 Commandments, now with the clarity of the spiritual dynamics that allowed God's glory to manifest in a unique way. I also saw Daniel and innumerable other believers whose fasts altered spiritual atmospheres and changed the course of events. Nicole, I am showing you these things because my church is entering a season in which understanding the power of fasting will be crucial. The battles that will come cannot be won with ordinary prayers alone. Fasting must be restored to its proper place. Then he showed me how collective fasting, when groups of believers fast together, generates spiritual storms of power, creating an impetus capable of transforming cities and nations. However, he also warned that not every fast has the same spiritual impact. Fasts done for show or merely out of obligation do not generate the same force as a fast performed with humility, genuine repentance, and a sincere desire to draw near to God. Over time, I was guided by these visions, which demonstrated everything, from the creation of new spiritual pathways in our senses to the strengthening in spiritual battles. Jesus showed me that during fasting, our prayers become precise weapons, and that our protection depends on remaining under the covering of His blood and His word. He further explained that fasting not only elevates our spiritual authority, but also builds true reservoirs of divine provision that sustain us in times of trial and during worship. The sacrifice of fasting is united with praise, creating a special fragrance that pleases God. As I concluded that part of my vision, Jesus made it clear that the times to come will require of His people levels of spiritual preparation that only fasting and prayer combined can provide. He instructed me to repeat this message with the authority of one who has seen the fruits, calling the church back to biblical fasting, not as an empty religious ritual, but as a means of joining His purpose and power. Just before everything began to fade away, Jesus reminded me that the power does not reside in the fast itself, but in His presence. Fasting positions you to join in what He already wants to do. When I returned to my body in the hospital, surrounded by an astonished medical team, no one could comprehend the magnitude of the experience. Being brought back from death without any brain damage was considered a miracle, but they did not know of all the revelations I had received. 3 months later, during a period of prolonged fasting and prayer, I experienced another inexplicable event in my room. While I was praying, my heart stopped beating for 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and once again I was transported to that realm of living light. This time, the experience was even more intimate. Jesus, with a kindly and tender expression, said, "Nicole, I have brought you back to show you the fruit of what you have learned." Suddenly I could see a panoramic vision of the spiritual impact that had been unfolding since I began sharing my testimony. I saw streams of light, the very same spiritual channels I had already witnessed, multiplying across the earth, representing those who embraced biblical fasting and experienced a profound transformation. I witnessed lives being restored, addictions broken, healings taking place, and relationships being re-established by the combined power of prayer and fasting. Jesus emphasized that what I had seen was not only for me but for all of His beloved church, His precious bride. Every truth shared had planted seeds that were now bearing fruit, creating effects that would extend through generations. He declared that the days to come will require His people to walk in levels of spiritual authority they have never known. The fast that I have shown you is not optional. It is an essential preparation for what is to come. He instructed me to repeat this message with the authority of one who has seen the fruits, calling the church back to biblical fasting, not as a religious duty, but as preparation for the greatest outpouring of His Spirit in the end. As my vision began to fade, Jesus left me with a final message. "Tell them that I do not call you to fast so that you may earn my love, for that love has already been fully given to you. I call you to fast so that I can entrust my power to you. Darkness is increasing, but through prayer and fasting, my light in you will shine ever more brightly." When I returned to my body for the second time, I knew with conviction that God allowed me to see these things so that His church might rediscover the transformative power of biblical fasting, not to manipulate or win favor, but to position itself alongside heaven in these crucial times. If you are reading or listening to this testimony, know that it is not by chance. Jesus is calling us to a deeper understanding of fasting, to embrace a unique opportunity for partnership with heaven. The spiritual kingdom is as real as the visible world, and biblical fasting allows us to impact generations to come. The time is now. Jesus is calling, and He expects His church to respond.